Recording live in the lucky number 7 lounge. This is Dine, Drink, Vegas, the podcast. Buy-in for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions, and for most of America, someplace warm. You have stumbled your way into episode 72. I'm your host, John, also known as the baller on the budget, and the guy who frequently gets the order of this intro wrong. And in this episode, we're going to bring you some Las Vegas news that we thought was interesting, and of course, our patented drink of the day. But before we can bring you any of that premium, top shelf, high quality Las Vegas travel content, we have to bring in the founder of Dine, Drink, Travel and Dine, Drink, Vegas himself. Yes, of course, I can only be speaking of the high roller, formerly of the High Plains, the leader in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer, the one and only Bill. Good evening, Bill. Are you warm and alive?
I am warm. I can't promise you that I'm alive. How the heck are you, John?
I am doing great. The pipes have thawed out. We had running water as of 4 o'clock yesterday. I actually got to shower, and certain toileting issues were a lot more simple when you have a working toilet, which is a highly underrated feature of modern American life.
It is a thing I value. Fortunately, I mean, so many things are just better here in Alabama. One of them is the weather. It froze overnight, but there were no problems with pipes. There were no problems with navigation. It has been delightful here.
Yeah, we've had ice and snow and all of the things. Our part of the world gets about 10 inches of precipitation a year, and that's 3 very long days. As it turns out in this case, that was 3.5 days of being frozen in like Nanook of the North. But we have thawed out and life is returning to normal. It is a reason why I need to drink. So, Bill, before I give a rundown, did you have a chance to sip the drink of the day?
Only barely, but I intentionally didn't because this drink is so different from anything we've ever done before that I kind of wanted it. I wanted to taste it live and on the air. My guess is this is a very John-centric drink, right? Like, it wasn't hard to make, but the ingredients screamed you. So before I try it live and on the air, why don't you tell our listeners what I'm about to enjoy?
Oh, well, I just realized I messed mine up because I copied and pasted. So the drink of the day is called an Amaroni, and it is a spin on the Negroni. Now, I found this recipe on the website for Angostura, House of Angostura. They call for 1.5 ounces of Amaro di Angostura, 1 ounce of London dry gin, 1/2 ounce of sweet vermouth, and I messed up and put in dry vermouth, and a couple drops of Angostura orange bitters. All of that gets stirred. Now, you could build it in the glass and stir in the glass, or you could stir in your cocktail mixing glass, strain over, and then put on a fresh ice rock. I built mine in the drink because I'm lazy. Bill, what do you think? And I'm just realizing I messed mine up, and I think it may have been a stroke of genius. But what do you think?
So I made mine exactly to spec, save for the fact that I did not put in 2 dashes of orange bitters. I put in like 5 because I feel about orange bitters the way you feel about regular aromatic bitters. But let me give this a shot. I mean, it's fine. I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't know that it's something I ever intentionally order. The Angostura taste is incredibly strong in here. I use Bombay Sapphire as my London dry gin. It's coming through. Oddly, the vermouth and the orange bitters, I'm not really picking up much up, right? Like, both the gin and the Angostura are absolutely there, but those other 2 things are not.
So I'm going to say this. If you have ever had a Negroni and thought, this is too sweet for me, this is subbing out the Campari, which is a very sweet Italian aperitif that's closely related to Amaro. This is less bitter than Campari. And I like Angostura. We've established that, so it's good. I will say, Bill, I'm happy I messed this up and grabbed the dry vermouth, and I just now realized I made that mistake. I'm guessing for you it's a little too sweet.
No, it's actually not too sweet. I can certainly taste the sweetness there, but the Angostura is so dominant that I'm tasting other things before the sweet notes hit.
I will say, having done this with a dry vermouth, I quite like this, but again, it's well established. I mean, I drink Trinidad sours where Angostura is the lead spirit. Like, if you can drink a cocktail with an ounce and a half of Angostura as your base liquor, then you like those flavor profiles. If you're a fan of Angostura, I think this is a must with the sweet vermouth or dry vermouth, although I think the dry vermouth is brilliant and I like it this way. I don't want it any sweeter. If you don't like Angostura, I would say if you find the Negroni too bitter, but you have some other Amaro around your home bar, this might be a gateway for people to get into the Negroni without the Campari, because Campari punches you in the face with that bitterness.
So it does, but oddly, I enjoy the bitterness of the Campari. Yeah, I guess I prefer the classic Negroni to the Amaroni, right?
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, like this drink is fine. I like a Negroni better, and I actually really appreciate that inspiration, John. After we're done recording tonight, that's what I'm going to go pour myself as I'm doing the post editing on this show.
Well, that's fair enough. So I think we'll call this one a split. I actually really love this drink. Of course, I didn't make it to spec. Use the same gin as you, by the way, but I did use a dry vermouth instead of a sweet vermouth. Listeners, I love this, but I'm an Angostura nut. Bill is lukewarm about it and would rather have a classic Campari. So figure out where you fall on that spectrum, and then you can decide whether or not this drink is for you. But I will say, well, before we move on, listeners, if you have any other Amaros in your cabinet and you want to make this with whatever Amaro you have on hand, I would love to hear what you think. And Bill, if I have another tonight, I think I'm going to make one with the Chinar.
So I respect that. And listeners, before we move on and talk about the Las Vegas news, John just talked about it, but we really would love to hear from you in the comments section of whatever platform you're listening to this on, or find us on social media. I'm at Dine Drink Travel. John is at Dine Drink John on X. But tell us what you think of this drink and what variations you would make with it, because we would love to hear your ideas. John, should we move on and talk about news?
One more thing, if you've got a suggestion for the drink of the day, send us that too. We're all ears, because I get tired of coming up with cocktail ideas.
Yeah,
and Bill will just do whiskey on the rocks.
I absolutely will. But yeah, tag us on social media, Dine Drink Travel. I will follow up on your idea. And if you've got a good one, we will absolutely hear it live and on this show. Well, John, do you want me to take our first news story?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off for us?
So there is big news from downtown Las Vegas for our friends from Canada. As we've talked about on this podcast before, international visitors from Las Vegas or to Las Vegas are down. But according to CTV News, 8 News Now, and several other sources, the Derek Stevens properties in downtown, which are the Circa, the Golden Gate, and the D, are running the At Par program through August. That means they will accept Canadian dollars as if they are U.S. dollars. Now, as of January 26, which is yesterday as we record, a Canadian dollar was worth 0.73 U.S. dollars, which makes this a huge cost savings for one of our 2 closest neighbors. Now, there is a catch. You do have to present a Canadian ID to use this offer, which means a citizen of the United States couldn't just go buy Canadian dollars to get, a quarter discount off of Las Vegas. But visitors from Canada, we love you. We hope you will go back to our favorite city. And I think this is just a genius idea. John, have you done much reading on this particular promotion?
I haven't seen much on it. I will say I know my favorite Canadian Las Vegas content maker, Pennies to Vegas, has got to be thrilled by this, because that guy drops a lot of money in Las Vegas. So this will be a good deal for him. I will also say this. The D has Bar Canada, which is one of my favorite places to drink in Las Vegas. It's the upstairs section of the D. You can get to it from outside. There's an outside entrance that goes right up to one of my favorite video poker spots. They've got both the Fortune Cup and the old school horse racing machines, and they have La Fin du Monde, one of the greatest beers in the world, up there. So I hope our neighbors to the north show up. Please leave your sad bacon at home. We have better bacon here, but please bring yourselves, Canadians. You are lovely people, and we would love to have you in our country.
We absolutely would. Well, John, what else is going on at Derek Stevens Properties downtown?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Bill. So this month, I think on January 6th, if I read this all the news stories right, Andiamo's at the D. Now we've talked about Andiamo's before. They are a steakhouse, but I have made the argument that Andiamo's is better treated as an Italian place. Well, they're running a $75 prefix menu. So for that, you get three courses. The antipasti gives you a choice of Caesar salad, which they used to do tableside. I don't think they're doing that anymore. Banana peppers and homemade sausage or fried calamari. Your entrees are a steak Diane, a grilled salmon, or a chicken piccata. I do wish that gnocchi was on this menu. And then for dessert, you can get either their tiramisu or their cheesecake. All of that for just $75, which is a darn good deal in Las Vegas. Bill, I know you like tasting menus and this sort of thing. Normally at fancier places, but does having that chef curated prefix menu at a place like Andiamo's get your attention?
Yeah, I would go for this. And as you just discussed, so it's a steakhouse, but they have a lot of Italian dishes. I'm surprised that none of the entree choices are some of their more Italian leaning things like a pasta. Like they've got a chicken piccata, they've got other options like that. I'm surprised those options aren't there. And I'm really torn here because my favorite of the antipastis is the banana peppers and homemade sausage. That just sounds delicious. And my favorite of the entrees or the mains is the steak Diane. But having a sausage antipasti with the steak for an entree is oof, that is going to sit heavy and might lead to an unpleasant evening in Vegas. What would you get off this menu, John?
I think I probably do the Caesar salad because I like that. Although the calamari, I do have a thing for calamari. And I think of the entrees, I probably go with the chicken piccata, although the steak Diane and the salmon both look good. But I think we're going calamari, we're going piccata, and absolutely the tiramisu. Tiramisu is an elite dessert. Plus, you just pair that with an espresso martini, and you've really got some dessert magic. I think that's how I would play that night.
And I will say I enjoyed their bar service there, and I think that a martini is absolutely the right way to go with whichever one of these things you get.
Yeah. And at a Derek Stevens property, the drink service is always going to be on point. It's one of the things the man does well.
Indeed. Well, in other news, I want to comment on a world record for this podcast, John. We are about to have our third news story, and it is the first time we've quoted Scott at Vital Vegas. Has that ever happened before?
No, we always steal from Scott first, but I felt like the Canadian story was bigger. You put that on the run sheet first, and I was not going to disturb the mojo. I left it up high where you put it.
All right, very good then. Well, Scott at Vital Vegas reports that the Cromwell will stop booking rooms by February 15th as the property gets ready to transition into the Vanderpump, which Scott says may be open by April 13th-ish, pointing out that all these dates are not yet set in stone. I'm not going to lie, John. I kind of liked the Cromwell, at least as a place to stop in and gamble. What in the tarnation is the Vanderpump going to be? Like, have you heard anything about this new take on the hotel?
So Lisa Vanderpump is big because reasons, I think because of design and art and cooking. I don't know what, I frankly don't know. I know
she does the
wife,
things.
Yeah, my wife knows who she is. There are several Vanderpump lounges. The Caesars has one. Paris has one. They are very beautiful spaces to drink, but they are very she girly places to drink. I think the Cromwell is going to turn into a place that is either where you take your significant other for a romantic getaway or where the ladies go for a girls' trip. Definitely not a candidate for a guy's trip. But I never stayed at the Cromwell. I don't know that I ever set foot in the Cromwell, to be honest, other than to get out of the Vegas heat and walk through the casino. I don't think I've ever wagered $1 under that roof. I don't have an attachment to this. However, if my wife wanted to go here and it made her happy because it's got all the pretty and frilly things that she enjoys, don't get me wrong, I'd go with her. You were going somewhere else. But with my bride, sure, I'd give it a try.
Fair. Well, what else do we have, John?
Vegas publicity shared news that Fontainebleau, Las Vegas will host the Vichin Power Slap 18, featuring a showdown between Wolverine versus the Crazy Hawaiian on March 6th. Power Slap is in a Nevada licensed slap fighting league. And yes, listeners, that is what it sounds like. Two people stand up, hold on to a rail, stare each other in the eye, and take turns smacking the taste out of one another's mouth until somebody passes out or cries uncle. This is going to happen on March 6th. As of last night, Monday, January 26th, according to StubHub, 99% of the seats were sold out. The remaining seats started at $190 plus taxes and fees. Now, Bill, I've seen these videos online of these slap fights, and I like watching people smack each other as much as the next guy. I had no idea this was big enough to be almost sold out a month and a half in advance. Would you have any interest in seeing this live or placing a bet on it and watching from the sports book?
Sober me has absolutely no interest in that because that sounds dumb. Me in Vegas, I can absolutely see we let the evening take us there. I don't know that I'd want to see it in the sports book, but let's say I win a little money at the blackjack tables. Yeah, fine, right? Like I don't think this is a thing I plan to go to. It's kind of like Denny's. It's a place you wind up. But yeah, I can see us winding up there.
But the thing is, it's so popular, you're not going to be able to just wind up there unless you pay scalper prices. It sounds like this has a big enough following that you got to want to be at this thing.
And Sober Me is the one who books these things in advance, and Sober Me doesn't actively want to.
Okay, I hear you, but maybe sometimes Sober You should do Drunk You a solid and pre-play it for shenanigans.
I am here with you.
But I'm putting a bet on the sports book, and I think I'm watching this at a sports venue rather than live. I think this is one where I don't need to pay the $190 to be in the room.
All right, that's fair. I'm kind of curious to go there to be live and in the room to see who actually shows up to that event. But moving on into other stories, and a story that's sure to make you happy, John. Food and Wine magazine says that the Las Vegas food scene is increasingly moving off the strip into, wait for it, the arts district. And we've spoken about most of these restaurants before that Food and Wine features, but they are particularly fond of your favorite, Esther's Kitchen. The arts district, I think, is increasingly worth checking out. But, and I mean this, John, for the love of bacon, take an Uber rather than trying to walk there. So, John, what do you think is making the arts district such a happening, developing place in Las Vegas?
Well, this is being driven primarily by Vegas locals. I think there was a move. I listened to the Food and Loathing podcast, which if you happen to be a food industry nerd, give that a listen. They don't do what we do. They do not speak primarily to tourists. So we got your tourist advice, but if you happen to just be one of those people that likes to nerd out on the food industry, even though I only worked in the food industry briefly at a surface level and many decades ago, it's fascinating. But one of the things they talk about that foodies in Vegas used to be frustrated that all of the good stuff was concentrated on the strip. And back in those days, not even downtown. There weren't great restaurants downtown, just the strip. And back in the neighborhoods, it looked like every other American suburb. You had your Outback Steakhouses, you had your Olive Gardens, you had your Taco Bell and McDonald's, but nothing really special that catered for locals. What we're seeing now in Las Vegas, and not just in the arts district, but in pockets all over the Las Vegas Valley, are high-end food places at locals' prices. We talked about Butcher and Thief in the last episode. And I think this is exciting for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you are the baller on a budget, you can get some really high-end meals at a lower cost, not cheap, but at a lower cost by getting out of the tourist areas. But number two, you like to talk about things like Little League Baseball and water levels, because as you point out, Las Vegas is a real city where real people live. I think if you're there for 3 or 4 nights, if you're only there for 1 or 2 nights, stay in the tourist areas and have fun. If you're there for 3 or 4 nights, have one meal outside of the major tourist areas and go see some locals hangouts. And the Arts District is a perfect place for that because you'll get a sense of what Vegas is like for the locals while you're doing all the tourist stuff.
I think that is totally fair. So, John, one of the things which unites both the locals in Las Vegas as well as the tourists is big league sports. What's going on with the Raiders?
So you've got 2 bullet points here that you added to the sheets, and I'm going to kind of roll those up into one because I think they go together. So the Raiders are one of several teams in the league that are looking for their head coach. As of 45 minutes ago, most of the teams with the coaching vacancy have found their head coach. The Raiders still have not. Also, the Raiders are sitting on the number 1 pick in the draft. Now, I'm going to do these in reverse order from the way you put them on here because I think it's important.
Great.
A lot of people anticipate that Fernando Mendoza from Indiana will be the number 1 pick in the draft. We know that both the owner of the Raiders and partial owner Tom Brady were at the national championship game, keeping an eye on things. Everybody seems to think that Mendoza's going to the Raiders, which means their new head coach needs to be an offensive mind. Now, there were several blogs by some of the talking heads from ESPN and Fox Sports and elsewhere going, the Raiders are going to wind up getting into a bidding war with an offensive genius with the Buffalo Bills. And let's be honest, the Bills are a highly competitive franchise with Josh Allen in his prime. The Raiders are a bad team who, granted, are going to draft somebody who looks to be a great professional quarterback, but it's still the Raiders. And in a scenario where the Raiders and the Bills are bidding on the same coach, that guy's almost certainly going to Buffalo. But news broke earlier today that Buffalo is promoting their current offensive coordinator to the head coach position, a move almost certainly dictated by Josh Allen saying, that's my guy, I want him in charge. And the Bills ownership responded, yes, Mr. Allen, meaning that one of the biggest contenders for offensive brain power is they're not going to get quartered by Buffalo. And this is good news for the Raiders to have an opportunity to get the right coach and draft the right young quarterback and maybe finally build something that has a chance of being a winner. So, Bill, I know that you're not a big NFL fan, but you're a fan of college football. Do you think Mendoza's game is going to transfer to the next level? Because college talent doesn't always pan out in the NFL.
So I may have the world's worst record of knowing which college talent is going to make it in the NFL. I thought Johnny Manziel would do great in the NFL. It turns out I was wrong.
You're way wrong.
Yeah. So Mendoza looks phenomenal to me, but I don't understand enough about the difference in the NFL and the college games to understand what makes one successful. I just like the guy. He seems like a decent human being. And if the Raiders are going to draft him, I hope they spend some money on an offensive line so he doesn't get crushed.
Amen.
Right. Yeah. Because my understanding is that the defensive linemen in the NFL are quite large, and what they like to do is hurt quarterbacks. And he's going to need an offensive line around him.
He absolutely will, but I will say one of the things that makes the difference between a college quarterback and an NFL quarterback, and I think what happened to Johnny Manziel, is you have players that depend too much on their athletic ability, and they don't develop the cerebral part of the game. And what that means for a young quarterback, potentially with a shaky line, knowing that the defense is going to sell out to rush you because you're a rookie. If you can't make smart decisions with the football, if you don't know when to go ahead and slide to the ground and take the sack, or go ahead and throw the ball away and don't force it somewhere you shouldn't, then even if you're a gifted athlete, you're going to have a rough go of it. Mendoza has shown the ability to make good decisions. He has all the physical tools. It's ugly when he runs, but he can scramble and run. That slows down pass rushes. right? Can't sell out on the blitz if this guy can find a hole and make you eat that blitz by picking up a first down with his feet. Mendoza can do that. It's ugly, but he can do it. But he also tends to make smart decisions. Before the national championship game and the two other playoff games, he had more touchdowns than incompletions and no interceptions in those games. He makes good decisions with the football. He knows when a play is done and he's got to get out of it. And as they develop a line around him, that brain of his is what's going to save his body from taking the sort of beating that exposed a guy like Johnny Football, who was all brawn and no brains.
Fair. Well, in other sports-related news in Las Vegas, John, the Las Vegas Review-Journal is reporting that the Bally's project being built around the A's Stadium should cost $1.19 billion. It is scheduled for completion in 2030, which I think is interesting given the 2028 start date for the team. So, John, the fact that Bally's is building a project that's not going to be ready until after the A's are theoretically playing there, do you think that's the sign of a problem?
It's a huge problem. And I'm going to say this. We've talked a lot on the podcast about Scott from Vital Vegas says neither of these projects are happening because neither of them has the funding. And you and I disagree about the baseball stadium because whether or not the A's have the money, Major League Baseball will get this across the finish line. And I think that's the piece Scott is overlooking. This is a league that has the right to force an owner to sell or take on outside partners to get something done because there's a clause in your ownership agreement that says we can do what's in the best interest of baseball, and the best interest of baseball is to get this thing built. And I don't think Scott is taking that seriously. The stadium happens, but Bally's is in a whole other problem. I don't think anybody looking at the tourist numbers being down all across the Las Vegas Valley, I don't think anybody is itching to loan or give or invest with Bally's to get that casino done. If I were a casino operator, particularly MGM, who owns everything else in the neighborhood, I would be sliding up to Bally's right now to start making them offers to buy them out, because I can't imagine any scenario where they get the $1.19 billion. And I think Scott is dead wrong on the ballpark. But as things stands, he's right about the casino. Bally's can't afford to build this.
I would be shocked if MGM doesn't wind up with that property.
I mean, it makes the most sense. It's just a matter of, can they beat Bally's up to get to a number that Bally's can stomach?
Yeah, fair enough. What else is going on, John?
Well, you owe taxes on casino winnings because you know you're supposed to claim those things, right, everybody? Right? And the fact that they cut the number of IRS agents will not stop you from doing what you're legally required to do, right? And you can deduct losses up to the amount you won. However, under legislation passed last year, you can now only deduct 90% of your losses, leaving some gamblers in a real financial hole. Congress was considering legislation last week to fix the hole, and according to Yahoo Finance, did not advance it last week. This means it's unlikely to make progress in the current session. In other words, not a time to save you this year. Now, listeners, if you're not big at math, you have to imagine it this way. Let's say that you have a win-loss balance sheet of all the casinos that you went to, that you won $100 and you lost $100. I'm using small numbers to keep it simple. Under the old system, that's a wash. You owe on 100, you deduct 100, you owe nothing. But under these rules, you're going to have to pay taxes on $10 because you can only deduct 90. Now, income taxes on $10, no sweat, no big deal. But a lot of you out there, it wasn't a $10 loss or win. It might have been something more along the lines of 5,000 in winnings and 10,000 in losses, right? So this becomes an issue for you because what you're going to pay is going to go up. Bill, do you think there's any prayer that they get this fixed within the next 2-3 years?
I think eventually they do. So to the scenario you just used, you won a $5,000 jackpot, and there's paperwork that goes to the IRS at that point, but you lost $10,000. Under the old system, it was a wash. Now you've got a $5,000 loss, or win rather, but even though you lost $10,000, so you lost money in Vegas, you can only claim $4,500, which means you owe taxes on your gambling winnings, even though you lost money in Vegas. I think eventually the Vegas lobby gets through. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of wealthy people that like to gamble. Some of them are members of Congress, I'll point out.
Touche. Well,
I mean, Senator Tuberville and that sports betting. Just saying.
In our last news story for tonight, Planet Hollywood opened a poker room. I think it was just before the 2025 World Series of Poker, and it is already closing. According to PokerNews.com, Caesars Entertainment is closing the room at the end of January, so probably by about the time this podcast drops. And the good news is that the dealers will keep their jobs because they're going to instead transfer to Caesars Palace or Horseshoe. So, John, why do you think so many poker rooms in Las Vegas are closing?
I think there's only so much appetite to play live poker. There's a couple of different things that go into this. I think you have a lot of people who love poker but are low stakes gamblers, and it is hard for a casino to run a low stakes game. So that drives a lot of us like me to video poker. I also think that there's a degree to which, let's say you go to a medium stakes room, right? In a high stakes room, you're probably playing against pros. And I'm a decent poker player. But if I'm in there against pros, I'm going to get run because I can play the cards. I don't know that I have the psychology to play the other players. But let's say I go to a mid-level table with a $500 buy-in, and there's some yahoo from Poughkeepsie that's watched too much poker on TV and goes all in on every hand. And I did not play. Both of our families went on a cruise ship. I didn't play poker. I was standing next to one of the poker tables, planning to buy in when a seat opened. And I literally watched this scenario where this fool who watched way too much TV poker was going all in at Texas Hold'em on every hand, whether he had it or not. It ruins the fun of the game when you have people who are drunk and don't know what they're doing and making poor decisions. And unlike some other games like blackjack, because I get mad when people get mad at blackjack players, you took my card or you didn't. Shut up. Play your hand. Let the player next to you do what they want. But poker's different because it is player versus player, not player versus dealer. I think it's hard to find a critical mass that can get into a poker game they can afford that's going to be a pleasant experience for them. I do like the thing that Aria tends to do, which is they will pop up poker rooms when they roll through seasons when they know the demand's there. They'll move the slot machines out and turn a portion of the table into a poker area. And then when the demand drops, they roll the tables out, put the slot machines back in. I think you're going to see that sort of flexibility, and poker is going to be, at least live table poker is going to be more of a niche game in Vegas.
Well, fair enough. Well, John, I think that's about it for the news stories we have. But a week and a half ago, you came here to visit me in Alabama, and there are some Vegas tangential things about that visit I would like to talk about before we close off this show. And one of them is alcohol, which is directly relevant to our ability to make drinks of the day. So, yes. John, like the second thing we did here, the first thing we did was I took you to lunch because you did not believe me before you came here that in Alabama we know how to fry a chicken. I may be making that part up, but
I kind of suspected you could.
Yeah, we went and had some fried chicken. But the second thing we did in Alabama was I took you to the liquor store. So, folks, the liquor stores in Alabama are controlled by the state of Alabama. They only sell liquor. They don't sell beer and wine. Beer and wine you get in the grocery store. There are advantages and disadvantages to the system, but that is the way things are. John, what do you and I took you to the largest of the state-controlled liquor stores in my town. There are also some private liquor stores here, package stores. You can get beer and wine at those, but the problem is they have to buy their liquor from the ABC stores, which means they always cost more, and it's a terrible deal, and they don't get any of the allocated product. So you buy your liquor at the state stores. John, I have bought a lot of liquor in your town. That was your first time being at a liquor store in my town. What do you think about the liquor availability in Alabama?
I was actually surprised because you have bad-mouthed it, and the state store you took me to was not the one you frequent most. Am I correct about that?
That is correct. I actually went to a different one today because there was some product that I needed that my regular store has that the better store doesn't have, because the product selection is absolutely hit and miss depending on which individual store you go to, and you've got to go to several until you figure out a way to get all your product.
So I will say that based on our conversations, there were products like having access to a range of Amaros and aperitifs that you made it sound like you could not get, where actually your selection is better than mine. Huh. There are certain products that, because of my location in Texas, one of our local breweries down the road from me has a beer called 5 Hour Drive because we're that far from any place cool. Literally, I've got to drive several hours up to Lubbock or out to Dallas, Fort Worth, or Austin or San Antonio to get to one of our bigger liquor chains in Texas, somewhere like Specs, which God bless Specs. I love Specs. But your liquor selection at that larger state-run store was actually better than mine for the range of cocktails I want to make. And I actually took pictures of bottles so I know they have it. But there's limitations, like the Angostura, the Amaro de Angostura we used in this drink. I left you a 3-ounce pour of that. You can't get that in your local store. But there were like 5 or 6 other Amaros you can get, many of which I can't get here either. So you actually have easier access to a lot of things for making unique drinks than I do. It is a little bit limited, but it was pretty good, Bill. Actually, I would trade your liquor store for that particular liquor store for any of the ones I have here in my hometown.
Well, the other advantage I've got is that it is not hard for me to get to Georgia or Mississippi, which gives me additional options. And the Georgia, or for that matter, Tennessee, right? So I am from your part of Texas, and I fundamentally think of leaving town as a 5-hour drive. I am still getting used to, in honor of the beer, right? Mm-hmm. I'm still getting used to being in the southeastern United States, where a 5-hour drive probably has me in Germany. I don't know. You go through a lot of places if you drive 5 hours. But in my town, there are some advantages and disadvantages. But let's talk about like bars. And, we try to mask our locations a little bit, but I took you to my favorite cigar bar in the downtown district in my town. What did you think about that cigar bar I took you to, John?
That was a lot of fun. I will say there was live R&B music. So the demographic of the crowd that night decidedly didn't look like you and me.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that because everybody was having a good time. Your bartender there absolutely knew his craft. I kept it fairly simple because they were getting slammed. They were super busy. Cigar selection was good. Rum, scotch, and you told me that they didn't have the world's best rums, and you were true. The rum selection was small, but they were all excellent rums. The bourbon and scotch selection looked really good. Beautiful location. So yeah, I was taken with that. I will say, as much fun as I had at your cigar bar, that other bar we went to on Sunday, and it was very dead quiet because we were there at 4 p.m. I liked that even better. But every bar we stumbled through, and it must have been 6 or 7. Every bar was a lot of fun. Yeah. You live in a good drinking town.
I live in a great drinking town. And I am impressed with it. So I've got one last question, and it is about the general differences between Western Texas, which is a very libertarian place, and Alabama, which is not. So as we were driving you to the airport a week ago, and we were driving you to an airport in a different town, we passed a sign on the interstate. It said, quote, "Go to church or the devil will get you." And it had a picture of the devil with horns and hoof and all that, with a pitchfork poking somebody in the ass. So, John, what did you just, and to me, that sign sums up everything that is different about my new home that I love from the place I came from. What were your general impressions of your first weekend in Alabama?
So let me say this. There are parts of Texas that are absolutely the South. And that billboard would not be out of place in certain places in East Texas and North Texas along the Oklahoma or Arkansas borders, right? Once you get behind the Pine Curtain or even close to the Pine Curtain in what we call the Black Land, the farm land north and east of Dallas, that sort of culture is there. Some places down around the coast outside of Beaumont, you get that between Texas and Louisiana. My end of the state is decidedly a mixture of Southern, Southwestern, and Midwest. Not much Midwest. You get to the Panhandle, let's be real. Amarillo and Lubbock are Nebraska with accents. But my end of the state has some Southern attributes. It's not the Deep South. Some people like to think it is. It's not. It's got some influences. There's absolutely no doubt. And you and I had the conversation. I lived in Kentucky at one point in my life, whether or not Kentucky is the South. And I would argue, yeah, Kentucky is every bit the South, but it is hard to out Southern any place in Alabama we went. I will say that you and I spent time in multiple municipalities in Alabama. All of Alabama is the South. But we saw quite a wide range in ethnic and cultural diversity, education levels, economic levels. Alabama's an interesting place with a lot to offer. And I knew that intellectually, and you and I had talked about it, but it was something else to see that firsthand. I make fun of your state a lot. I really enjoyed my visit there way more than I thought I would. And there's a lot of good things about it. Now, I could also nitpick things about that state I'm not crazy about, but I had a good time.
Two things. One, I know exactly what your state's legislature did last year, John, because there were some highly controversial items. I don't know what my state's legislature did last year, which meant we elected not to be crazy. Second, I am a sixth generation Texan. On the most recent line of the family, like literally going back every branch, I'm a fourth generation Texan. But on the deeper branches, I am a sixth generation Texan on multiple lines. My children are seventh generation Texans. I still own a large property in Texas, and I will rest with my ancestors in Texas. I'm as Texan as a person can be. It is hard for me to describe how quickly Alabama has become home.
No, you are Hank Hill with a high degree of education, and I love you for it. Your Texas credentials are not in question.
When I flew into your town in August of last year, I looked at the sad, depressing landscape, and I went, well, I'm not from here anymore. I am from Alabama, and I am proud of it.
To be fair, the part of the state I live in, I was born in. I have escaped multiple times only to return. If you are from the Permian Basin, we have a saying out here that if you want to make God laugh, pack up and say, I'm never moving back. Because we tend to. I will almost certainly live the rest of my life and die in Texas. It's not going to be here. I have yet another escape plan, and this time I mean it. But this part of the state feels like Alcatraz. Everybody wants out. The rest of the state's not that way. There are places in Texas I dearly love. I cannot imagine a scenario where my family joins your. Well, no, let me correct that. I don't think it's likely that my family joins yours in Alabama. I will say if it worked out that way, our wives get along so well. Clearly, you and I go out of our way to travel together, do this podcast together. I would not mind living in Alabama. I am probably a Texan through and through, but I was surprised because I did not anticipate. I thought I'd have fun because I'd get to see my buddy and have some good food. Dude, I kind of fell in love with your state. I'm not going to lie. It was way better than I thought it would be.
Awesome.
Because I'm not going to lie, Kentucky left a bad taste in my mouth. But I was sober the whole time. And I think the trick to Kentucky is you got to drink bourbon while you're there.
We do not do sober in this town. So, John, is it time to bring this to a close?
I think it is. Listeners, if you stuck through all of that about Not Vegas, we appreciate you. Bill, why don't you tell them where they can get more Dine Drink Vegas and Dine Drink Travel content?
Folks, you can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas, where we bring you short and focused videos which help you plan your next trip. Things like 5 or 10 minutes on a particular hotel room or a particular restaurant. You can also find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Travel, where I'm increasingly putting more content, including things like the executive lounges in the Las Vegas airport and my trips to Ireland. You can find me on every social media platform at Dine Drink Travel, but the most prominent of those is X, because that's where you can find John.
I'm at Dine Drink John, where I'm happy to talk to you about the NFL, why the Dallas Cowboys always break my heart, about fine coffee, about adult beverages, about barbecue, and anything else you might want to talk about. We thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you've got a friend that's planning a trip to Las Vegas and could benefit from either the Leader in the Luxury Lounge advice or the Baller on a Budget's advice, please share this podcast with them. If you have a mortal enemy who hates listening to old fat white guys drink and talk on end, share it with them too. Either way, you're helping us build an audience. So share these links to these podcasts. And until the next episode, thanks for listening and happy travels.